So good afternoon. We live in an astonishingly interesting time in that of the 7 billion people on the planet, 2 billion are on the internet and 6 billion have cell phones. So this has become the most pervasive technology in human history. More people carry one of these devices than have access to clean drinking water or electricity. And arguably all of this technology in humanity has increased our productivity, but it also means we are drowning in the information that comes towards us through these technologies, the amount of email that keeps flooding towards us, and the extent to which our lives are now accessed by other people sending us information through all of this medium, whether it's text or email or other means. So on the one hand, it does increase productivity. On the other hand, we also feel overwhelmed. Into this field has stepped in Jared Goralnick, one of the foremost experts on how do we live a more productive, sane, and happier life while still using all of these technologies. In fact, Jared was so convinced about this topic that he has become part of the leadership team at the Information Overload Research Group. He founded 2 companies, first a consulting company to help people deal with productivity issues, and currently he is the founder CEO of a company that builds software, a company called Wayfind, that builds software to help us deal with information overload and increase our productivity. With that, let me turn it over to our speaker, Jared Goralnick, to help us improve our productivity across all forms of our life. Jared?
That's quite the intro. Thank you so much, Gopi, and thank you all so much for coming out. It's quite a privilege to be here. So that's a lot about me. I'd love to start by just learning a little bit about you. I'll have some general questions and then some specifics. But first off, just out of curiosity, which teams are folks coming from? How many are coming from search? Some people here. Okay, search. Ads side of that? Okay. Gmail. I know there's some Gmail folks. Yay, I hope to make an impact there someday. There'll be a little bit of email in this presentation. Plus, we've got some Plus folks. Great. Maps. I was hoping. I guess they're busy today. Any other teams? What other folks are here? Anybody shout out? Feel free. Android. Of course, yes. YouTube, great. And also, this is up on YouTube right now. Any other teams? Platforms. Great. Awesome. And how many of you folks are engineers? How many of you are marketing? Okay. Product management, HR. Awesome folks helping with video. Okay, great. So we have a bit of a distribution in here. Just in terms of my background, I was an engineer, or I sort of still am an engineer. I do more product now, but I was coding at 7 and whatnot, and then I went on and got a software engineering degree, but then got a philosophy degree. And I mention that because a lot of this is not about these little tools. It's about the why we're doing all of this. Like my first company was called Software Efficiency Training. And that's kind of the wrong word because efficiency is sort of assembly line stuff. It's, how do you produce more widgets? The word productivity is a little bit better. It sort of seems to imply if we're more productive, we get a little bit more choice about what we do that theoretically makes more impact, or maybe we can spend more time with our family. That's the hope of all this. And just to illustrate that, maybe I can start with an analogy. How many of you speak a second language? A third language? Fourth? Fifth. Okay, so you, sir, in the back in the green shirt, 4 languages. What's one of the languages you speak?
Well, of course, English, Hindi, Marathi,
and a bit of French. Okay, so Marathi. Where do you speak that in India? Or?
Mostly India.
Okay, so anybody else, anybody here been to India that does not speak a local dialect there? Okay, great. And what's your name in the green? I'm sorry. Deborah. And did you have a good time when you were in India? Yeah, it was an experience, yeah. So we have a lot, and other folks that went to India, you probably got a lot of that experience, but you had a different experience. And I'm sorry, what is your name again? You in the back, I'm sorry. I didn't ask you for your name before. Yes? Mans. Okay, so Mans speaks several local dialects, and other folks don't. And they both went to India, and they both were able to get by. And productivity is actually kind of like language in that way, in that, if you have fluency, there is a lot more depth that is possible in your experiences. And without that, you all still can get a lot done. But what happens is there's certain things you just can't choose to do. And I personally believe that Google does not pay you to be productive. That's not their goal. Their goal is for you to do something that achieves real scale. They want you to do something that's going to make one engineer not worth the $1.5 million that they're supposedly worth if you divide the numbers based on employees, but more that they're worth $1 billion because they build the next AdWords or the next Gmail or the next Android platform. So what I'm going to be talking about today is really a series of sort of tools like a language where I hope you will all sort of embrace them because they're an opportunity to then have more freedom and choice in how you spend your time. And I'm going to start off with email and with several little tweaks. These are kind of like the vocabulary of a language. They're little things that you can change and that you can do right away that can make what I hope to be a dramatic impact. The second part of my presentation will be about some of the techniques and sort of the concepts, or almost like the grammar in a language and how this applies. And the reason why I'm going back to language is because, again, this isn't supposed to be, I mean, how many people are familiar with like getting things done? Okay, how many are productivity adherence, some kind of system or another? Right? Okay, cool. So it's good that you're not all that way because I think these systems, it's sort of like being like, oh, I'm an agile guy, or oh, I'm a Python guy, or like all these little labels. That's not what I want this to be about. I want this to be about something where we recognize that these are tools that are necessary if we want to avoid that sudden death that I mentioned in here, if we want to be able to get off that hamster wheel and do something important. So, starting with a pretty simple thing, if you're on Google+ and you're on Facebook and you're on Twitter and you're on even Amazon, all these sites, they send you a lot of emails, right? But most of those emails are things that we never need to let into our life. So it's very easy to change the inputs in our life. And one of the easiest ways to do that is just simply to unsubscribe to the messages we don't need. We as product folks know that all these messages are how we build engagement, all these emails we send to folks. And of course, Google+ does that when I get a new connection and so forth. But I would encourage you to just spend 5 minutes sometime later today. All these slides are up. The link is at the end of this. But I would encourage you to spend 5 minutes. You can go to notifymenow.com. That's a site that I created that walks through all the sites, or many of the major sites, and tells you how to turn off some of the notifications. But instead, if you just get the personal messages that come from Plus, or from Facebook, or from Flickr, or from Amazon, or whatever it happens to be. On Amazon, the example would be like, the shipment changed its arrival date. You don't need to know that the shipment was made. It always is made. It's only if there's an alert that actually demands your attention that it should ever show up in your inbox. So if you change these inputs, you'll have less stuff sort of weighing you down. And then similarly, Gopi, you talked about 6 billion phones or something. It's amazing. We carry these things in our pockets that have this amazing ability to connect us, but also to pull us away from what we're doing right now. Nobody wakes up in the morning and says they want to check their email all day, and that's where they want to spend their time. But similarly, nobody walks into a meeting and says, I can't wait to find out about the stuff that's happening outside of here. Or maybe if it's a certain kind of meeting, you might feel that way. But we, in just about 1 or 2 minutes, can turn off all of those notifications because probably 1 in every 100 of those messages really demands our time right now. And there's a URL there again for how to turn those off on Android and other devices. How many of you have more than 100 messages in your inbox right now? Great that a lot of the Gmail people didn't raise their hand. More than 1,000? More than 15,000? OK, good. So 10,000, that's a lot of messages. I mean, it's interesting. The inbox, what I like to think of the inbox as, it's the place where other people set your agenda. So compare it to a task list. A task list has 2 things. There's only 2 things that are important about a task list. One is that you can change the order around. And 2 is that you can give it a title that you understand that you can work with. Whereas email, you could be doing hey, and it could have some important assignment in there. Or it could relate to something, a bunch of steps down after the conversation, change topics 3 times. And then, of course, it's just chronological based on when somebody sent it to you. It's a really awful place to spend a lot of your day. So anything you can do to get things out of your inbox is a very positive thing. It's the place where you don't want your attention to be sapped, and you definitely don't want to be seeing the same message over and over. So I think there's this technology that you guys have in Gmail that allows you to find messages that have been archived. I won't name it. There's some people who work on that team here. But you can use that to find those messages. And I'd encourage you to press Archive All. And then it gives you another option that lets you literally archive everything in your entire inbox, not just those 20 or 50 messages on that screen. And Gopi, you went through that. How was that experience?
Scary, jumping off a cliff.
Scary? And what happened? Did you land after you got off the cliff?
I survived.
for a little while, it feels quite amazing. And if you can maintain, it's not that you need inbox zero. It's that you just don't want to constantly be revisiting things and having that feeling of not knowing what's next. And here's a picture up here. This is Suzanne here. This picture was taken in 1985. She's pretty cute. I was all right back then when I was 4 years old. But I have a feeling that she has moved on. I know I have to sort of give up on this opportunity here. And this message has been uploaded all over the place by now. I think I can delete it from my inbox. I think a lot of the reason why we have so many messages is because we think there's something we need to find. But we have tools to find it. So whether you're archiving or you're deleting, you've got to move on from those messages. And I think you will find yourself so much more sane and so much more able to do things that are remarkable. And I've already talked about kind of what enters into your inbox and what grabs your attention from your mobile device, or maybe some of you even have pop-ups, not in Outlook, but you might have one of those Chrome extensions that shows you when you get new mail. Turn those off and don't continue to check email. I have spent much of my career focused on this concept of interruptions, and that's what my product does, a Wayfind. I don't know if you're aware, but we lose about 4 minutes to every interruption in the rabbit hole it sends us down. Studies show that if you're getting over 100 messages a day, that will turn into about a quarter of your day is lost interruptions in the time it takes to get back on track. And the main step to fixing that is to closing your inbox, closing your Gmail more of the day. You will never forget to check it, I promise you. So close it, not just during the holidays. And if you'd like to learn more about that, you can go to wayfind.com. I don't know if you're allowed to use my product at Google, but there is a guide to not checking email that's been downloaded over 100,000 times, and that's just free as part of our setup. And I hope it helps. It gives some more tactical steps for this material. So that's it for email. Any quick questions about email stuff before I jump on? Okay. We'll have a chance at the end if you guys want to hear all my opinions about things that could happen and change in that world. Second section here is about productivity. And first off, those of you that raised your hand with getting things done, you're familiar with the mind like water metaphor. Anybody remember that? Mind like water? Great. Is it something that's been helpful to you? Have you ever applied that?
I did. I sat still and made a crazy long list, and I achieved mind like water, and then I had a crazy long list. And I didn't know what to do next. I'm hoping you can tell me right now.
I will tell you right now. Okay, so mind like water. It's the concept that if you picture a little pond, right, and you picture a rock falling into that pond, how does the pond respond? Exactly appropriately. It makes little ripples at the angle and weight and momentum, et cetera, based on how you drop that rock in there. Now picture yourself having a harried day. Maybe this afternoon is going to be particularly busy for you, and you just cram this session in. And somebody comes to you and says, you know what, there's this bug, and it's actually live, and it's a really big issue. Now, how do you respond? Do you respond appropriately by walking over to your terminal, looking at what's going on, seeing how many people are doing it, or do you flip out and scream because you're thinking about the people you have to pick up later today, you're thinking about the other tasks you have to do, you're thinking about all this stuff going on. You are not like that rock falling into the pond if you have all kinds of things on your mind. So the goal of any productivity system, anything, it doesn't matter, is to get things out of your head and into a place that you can trust so that when new things come at you or when you get to an item on your task list, you can actually focus on that and not be overwhelmed by all that other stuff. Now, the first step to getting things out of your head is putting it somewhere else. Now, you could put it into Google Tasks, you could put it into some other project management tool, but the main thing is just getting it out of your head, because the reality is you're probably not going to get through all those things. But the first step is to literally just write it all down. It's cathartic. It's liberating. It's amazing just getting it out of your head. Now, you're right. You're going to end up with this big task list, and that might seem overwhelming. But first off, you can at least reorganize that as opposed to like your inbox and whatnot. But second of all, you're going to probably find that you'll never get to half of your tasks. I mean, there are things you have to do. There's a deadline. You need to show up somewhere or whatever. But there's a lot of tasks you will never get to. But getting it, and we have to accept that. We all in this room have to accept that there is more in life that we want to do than we will be able to actually do. But at least get it out of your head and have it there in a bucket list. So maybe even 5 years from now, you will get back to it. Just get it out of your head, and that's the first step. Knowing that it's there is totally fine. I recognize that I have a to-do list for today that I actually care about, and then I have a giant list that's out of sight, out of mind, and maybe that doesn't sound so good, but it feels a heck of a lot better. So get yourself that mind like water. And then you guys are a company that focuses on data. You have lots of things you can measure. And now quantified self, right? We have like 7 different devices we can carry around on ourselves to measure everything we do. I got into social media a long time ago. I mean, now I'm not, we don't even say we're into social media, that's not cool. But back in like 2006 and 7 when things were really starting to heat up again with blogs and then Twitter was coming onto the fore. And we were all watching our follower count and our friend number and all that stuff. And there's all these numbers that are around us. And if you find that you're checking statistics all the time, regardless of what statistics they are, think about whether it's something that is a key performance indicator for the value of your work or something you're trying to change in your life. Because if it's not, there's a good chance it's more just weighing you down, and maybe it makes you feel good when you get that extra number, or maybe it makes you feel awful. But if it doesn't really change something in your life or in your work, maybe you should just stop checking it. There's probably a lot of numbers around you. Think about which ones you can let go of. Maybe do it once a week, or maybe set a cron job that sends it to you once a week so you don't have to check it every 3 hours if there's been new signups on your product. Another thing, it's called the Pomodoro technique or Pomodoro method. I see a lot of folks here familiar with that. It's the idea of getting yourself into something for 50 minutes and focusing on it, and then moving on for about 10 minutes and maybe going to one of your mini cafes or talking to someone or having some other kind of challenge. You can Google Pomodoro, like the type of tomato, and this is just one of the techniques. I'm going to go into flow a little bit more, but this is just one of the many concepts I think that's worth researching if you're getting into this type of material. We've got folks here from the Plus team, and all that, I love your little notification that pops up all the time. But we as people who are knowledge workers, we do have other responsibilities besides the main task at hand. And in that 10 minutes or in that time that you dedicate to doing social media or keeping up with other things, I'd recommend going 100% into those things. Jump into that stream of social media or of analytics or whatever it happens to be, and then get out of it, as opposed to having the little alerts that pop up at different times. This is just like with email, but with other things. It's okay to have distractions, but I recommend batching them, putting them in one little place, jump into that stream, and then jump out of it. And also unplug. I mentioned making a giant list. I mentioned pressing Archive All, to get a little bit more clarity. But it's amazing. I mean, I bought the most expensive paper I could buy. I think it was like $15 for 108, brightness and 32-pound paper, whatever it happens to be. But it is liberating to just have that sheet of paper and get those ideas out. It's true, there's going to be periods where you have to spend 6 or 20 or 50 hours over a certain period of time writing an article or coding a particular module, whatever it happens to be. But there are times where you really just need clarity, and there's just something to be said for paper or turning off the internet. So try to add that into your routine. I mean, anybody ever been productive on a train or a plane before? Why not recreate that 1 hour of every day, that opportunity? In my mornings, I try to have a bit of time every day without internet activity. And it's amazing what you can get done in that period. Even if you have a few sites you need for that work, just bring them up in a tab in Chrome and then do the other stuff. And you have them there. And even make a list for the things you're going to have to do when you're back online. But it's amazing what you'll get done a little bit when you're offline. Plus, you have your phones and a million other ways to connect. So I even like taking this further and creating what I like to call a cone of silence. This idea that you literally just have one thing you're super focused on. And I know I keep sort of drilling into this point, but it's interesting with email, right? Most of us consume it at various points in our day, and probably various points in an hour. I think studies range between 18 to 36 times per hour. You guys have much better data on that, I'm sure. But that was, that was in the most recent Gloria Marks study. They referenced that. That's a lot of time to constantly check your email. That means that any given one task you're doing, you're spending less than 4 minutes on it. The truth is, though, is if you make email your job, if you literally say for the next 45 minutes, I'm going to do email, you will get through what you need to get through in there. You'll be able to process it, create tasks from it. You can all watch the Inbox Zero talk. That was Merlin Mann. You probably have all seen it, that he did here. It's a great way to learn all the processing techniques for email. But if you give yourself 40 minutes to really get into that inbox or really get into that article or that UX workflow or whatever it happens to be, it's insane what you can get out of it. And I know, again, I'm stressing the same point, but give yourself that cone of silence and you will do something amazing with that period of time. Also, think about the essential and the incidental. There's a URL here, bit.ly/thecriticalpath, and I have a whole article that I talk about how to write out a sheet of paper and figure out what your critical path is. But the concept of critical path refers to, at the end of this year, at the end of this quarter, or just in my life, here's something that really, really needs to happen. Maybe it's that we get 1 million users. Maybe it's that we increase adoption by this %. Maybe it's that we bring on this many brands to our product, whatever it happens to be. But if you look at your task list, that giant list you have of 100+ items, I will bet you that most of those things, probably more than half of them, won't actually relate to that specific goal. And that's what's fascinating, is we have this critical path, and most things aren't on it. And then all of a sudden it gets really easy to figure, if you say to yourself, you know what, in the mornings, I'm never going to do something that's not on my critical path. I know I have to respond to emails. I know there's this birthday thing coming up. I know there's these talks I want to see. But in my mornings, I'm only going to do things on my critical path. And amazingly, you will get forward with it. It's just sort of like the whole, if you spend 30 minutes a day on something forever, you're going to be the world's expert in that thing, or one of. So consider what is incidental and what is essential, what is critical, and try to fill your day as much as possible with those things. It's a really great heuristic for limiting tasks. And then circadian rhythms. This is one of these concepts that sort of sounds kind of like loosey-goosey. I don't know, I have different flow states different times of the day. But the reality is if you think about it, you have different energy levels at different times of the day. And if you have the ability to manipulate your schedule a little bit, you can structure it so that you do the right work for that energy level. So for me, what does that mean? It means that I don't do meetings before lunch. Why is that? It's because I have energy and I have focus at that time, before lunch that is. I do my most creative work before lunch. And that's amazing for me. Now when I'm sitting down in a meeting, particularly if there's a cup of coffee or something, I'm going to have no trouble. If I'm sitting with Gopi at 3 in the afternoon, he has my attention. I'm never going to mess that up. But if I'm sitting with with an article to write or a spec to draw out, I'm going to find everything else to do, and I'm going to be completely all over the place because I don't have the same attention in the afternoons. So think about how your day works and your energy levels, and see if there's a way you can adapt your day a little bit to it. And along the same line, just walking down the cafeteria here, I see that lots of people eating food that who knows if it's the best thing for them to be eating right now in terms of giving themselves energy for the rest of the day. But think about how the food you consume relates to your energy. For me, for example, I do all protein in the morning and just about all protein in the afternoon, or rather I don't touch carbs. It's not that I do all protein. And by cutting carbs out of my morning and my afternoon, it's amazing. I no longer, when I used to eat cereal or bagels in the morning, which I loved, I would be tired, or at like 10:30 or 11, I'd be hungry. I'm not saying that's the solution for you, but it's amazing how we really are slaves to our bodies, and we can really schedule our days and consider our intakes based on these kinds of things. And this is my last slide here. It's coming near the end of the year, and it's one of those times where we start looking back and thinking about the things we've accomplished, and I've been doing a bit of that lately. And what I've realized, maybe this won't come as a surprise, but I've realized the things that have made the biggest impact on my company, upon myself, there's 2 things about them. One is that those things were never assigned to me. Nobody told me to do that. My investors, my board, my team, friends didn't suggest it. I'm sure you've probably seen that users of your products rarely suggest the things that are the best features because they're not in it the same way. Maybe they are, but generally speaking, they're thinking 1 step out, and you're thinking 4 steps out. And for me, I found that, again, those things weren't assigned to me. And similarly, they were the things where I had to put in 100 hours, even though I probably could have done that same thing in 10 hours and it would have been okay. So think about, there's a lot of things in your job that you do good enough. You maybe even do it really well because you're just a smart person. Everybody in this room, I'm sure, is incredibly intelligent. And then there's other things, though, that you probably know you could either do it better or even more. It's the area where you are just like the best. There's something where you're in the 99-point-something percentile. And when you do those things, you've probably found that you can get amazing results with that. So when I write, my guide to not checking email, it was just something that nobody told me to do, and it got amazing, amazing attention from it. There's certain things that I've done in my life, like when I wrote the guide to Outlook versus Gmail, that back in the day got hundreds of thousands of views and made it to the front page of Dig, and it was this giant article. There was a big risk for me, but I put everything into it. And every time I've put everything into something, I've got insane results back. So when you think about your to-do list, think about what's not on your to-do list, and think about what you're best at, and maybe you can do something that's remarkable, as opposed to something that's just productive. Hopefully with fluency in these tools, you can free up a little bit of time in your days. Maybe you have that 20% time. Maybe it feels like you have the 20% time, but don't. But if you can have that time to do something that is going to scale, I think you'll be amazed with what comes out of it. So you can get in touch with me by Google. No, you don't have to do that. I'm just kidding. Here's my information. I'd love to keep in touch with all of you, but now I have time for questions. Actually, well, I'll bring out my calendar for one sec just to show kind of a quick tip here. So here's yesterday in my calendar. And I think you're bringing that up because we had talked about this stuff last time we had met. Has anybody ever been to an appointment? What's your name, sir, in the blue? What is it? Frank. Have you ever been to or been scheduled an appointment that says meeting with Frank? Has somebody ever sent you that calendar invite? How useful is that to you? We all do that. And well, actually, I don't do that anymore. It's terrible. I laugh at people when they do that. Every single time I create an appointment, I put what kind of appointment it is: coffee, Skype, lunch, colon. And then I put my name first. And then I put their name. And they love that. And it looks great in their calendar. They know what's going on. It indicates whether you need to be somewhere else or whether you don't need to be, whether you need video or not. But the main thing is never, ever create a meeting. I would never email Trevor and say meeting with Trevor, because he has to then look into the attendee list to find out who I am. And I had a meeting with somebody the other day where they did that, and their Gmail address was instructively. I didn't even know who they were. So that is my calendar tip, is always indicate what type of meeting it is, put your name, if you need to, parentheses, Google, dash, their name, if you need to, parentheses, their company. Good question. Frank.
Like the gentleman behind me, once you create that giant list, the anxiety of that list, like every time I've done the full-on GTD sort of thing of collecting that list, there's enough anxiety to it that one is just going through it takes a lot of time.
Sure.
And taking out value from it. And then you start creating these like hack lists where this is the real list of the things I want to get done, and you start ignoring that thing almost entirely. And so like after a couple weeks, that list is deprecated. It's no longer of value. And so you've captured it. It's like, how have you dealt with that? Because that giant list, you know, especially at Google, that list can be like pretty sizable.
No, it makes sense. I mean, so I know in GTD they talk about context. They say you should have your list for when you're in your car or your home or different things. I don't do all that. I just have a list of things that I'm actually really going to do, or that I actually have to do today. And then I have a list of things that I need to do that I really do need to do. And then I just have this giant list that someday maybe. And the soon list I look at every week. It's probably like 45, 50 items. The today list, I take some things from it. And it doesn't mean that I always get them done today, but it never gets to more than like 10 items. I try to keep it more like 3 or 4 items. So I have my things that I really have to do. I have the things that I hope to really do today. And then I have this giant list that I might look at every month or so. And when I'm going through soon, sometimes I move it to the forever, who knows, whatever list. And sometimes I don't. I do have other lists, but they're more like lists like of restaurants or movies or people's names I don't want to forget, things like that. I try to keep those off of the things that are actionable and that I have to really pay attention to, because those I actually will go back to look at. You know, I walk into the coffee house, I'm like, I know that person, I'm going to look that up. Like that's me accessing it that way. But I really try to keep the actionable, necessary stuff. Those are the only things I look at on a weekly basis.
So what are your tips for when you work with systems like GTD and to-do lists? How do you not let it focus you on the small tasks and do something bigger?
Well, it helps to know what your critical path is. What is the most important? Like, what is one of the most important things for your work?
What I notice when I really try and get into these productivity systems, they take your attention away from the big picture and onto these little chunks, little tasks. These little tasks are very optimized to do efficiently and be productive on that level. But then at the end of the day, all you have is like a list of these small little tasks that you've done and not your big project maybe. So I wonder what your suggestions are. How do you keep the focus on the big picture? while using those systems?
So I think there's two components to that. One component of it is the fact that you have some sort of review, like the evening before, you spend like literally 2 minutes and you're like, what do I want to get done tomorrow? So you have some idea about what is on the big project you want to do. And the second part of it is, and this is where some people I think make the mistake of when to use a calendar versus when to use a task. Like when do you block out? You shouldn't put all your tasks in your calendar. You all know probably the basic of why you don't put your tasks in your calendar. It's because the next day, if you didn't do it, it's now disappeared, but the task didn't disappear. So that's why you don't just use your calendar for your task list. However, that's why I was suggesting how I structure my day. So the thing that you really need to do that's on your big list, you can use your calendar for that. You can say 2 hours, or you could say, like what I do, I just know that it's my mornings is going to be my really, really important stuff. So recognizing that when I look for what I'm going to do tomorrow, something really important has to happen tomorrow. And then, if necessary, block that time out. Or if you just generally understand how your schedule works, then don't. And then spend your time on the little to-do list stuff. The 5-minute things I like to block all at once. A bunch of phone calls, like silly phone calls too, not even like really important work meeting phone calls. I try to batch those, but I think I had a postcard the other day I picked up. I should have brought it and put it on this presentation. Something like, I can't do any big things because I'm always spending time on the little things. So you need to block out those big things, or just, you don't have to necessarily put it in your calendar, but really just make sure that you know every day when you're going to be doing that. Because if you don't do that, you're never going to feel like you accomplish anything. And people say to do it first thing in the morning if you can. I like doing that. Some people don't. But if you do the major important stuff first thing, what's great about it is then all the stuff that piled up from your inbox and the other tasks you have to do, you can deal with them the rest of the day, but at least you got something really major done that morning.
So what I've noticed about new organizational systems, new management systems, is that it's not so much the things that you already know to do, it's things that you don't know that you have to do. The sudden interruption, the sudden high priority thing that you did not accommodate or plan for, like you get sick or something major happens and it blows apart your priorities. And therefore, once that disruption happens, you can't recover back, so you sort of just go on the way you used to. How do you handle that?
Well, that's the beauty of having a shorter task list. And what I mean by that is like, if you have that now list, then today when you get sick or somebody comes in with a real emergency, yeah, your day is screwed, right? Like, I can't fix the problem where you have 7 hours worth of stuff to do in 4 hours today. Like, it can't be fixed. But if that next day before you start your day or whatever, you are going to recalibrate and say, you know what, I'm just not going to be able to do that thing. I'm even going to tell him that I can't finish that thing on time. If you give yourself that opportunity every day to set what your task list is for the next day, then when you get one of these catastrophic things, you are able to sort of just manipulate what you're doing the next day, as opposed to just having this list of 100 things, and now you just never get to look at all the other 99 because you just have one that's at the top. Now, this may sound like I'm just saying I'm skirting around the problem, but I really think most of this stuff is psychological. And what I mean by that is like, when crises happen, we always get through it. It's up to us, though, of whether during that crisis we want to also feel overwhelmed by every single time we look at the place, whether it be our inbox or our task list, that sort of dictates how we should be spending our time. If every time we look at that we're also overwhelmed. So if you can respect yourself enough to say that if I make it out of sight, out of mind, I'm going to live with that, then you'll make some hard decisions and move some things off your today list into the soon list. And just accept that certain things won't get done. But it's better to tell yourself, I'm not going to do this, than to try to just pretend that adding a bunch of crazy stuff into your list is somehow going to happen, because all you can do with that is time. You have to say no to some things, but I think the best way to say no to that is every day to have a little bit of a conscious decision about what you want to accomplish that day or the next.
So I have a question regarding how to make this to-do list itself, So right now my to-do lists are kind of scattered over a few things. I have like few labels on the emails, like to do or something. Then I have like a bug list, which me and my peers and my manager keep filling, and that's my to-do list.
Sure.
And then I have like a to-do list, like a special list which I make, So my question is like, how do you make this to-do list? Because if I start making one giant to-do list, basically I'll be scraping the emails again and again to put into this list, whereas it's easier to just keep the labels. Same with bugs, like if I want to keep just one list, I'll have to keep scraping the bugs and then like note down the minute details of that in my to-do list. So I'm kind of recreating some of the work which is easier to do, but at the same time I do get distracted with the emails that pop up, so my question is like, how do you deal with making this to-do list itself efficiently without having to redo a lot of work,
Sure. So a function that people, I mean, everybody here probably knows you have the add to tasks list that comes from, I mean, the menu option, and you also have the shortcut for it to take an email and turn it into a task. So that's what I do, is just a starting point, and just about every project management tool will notify you via email. So for me, I'm not wasting that many steps to turn something from an email or something from some other project management tool into now a task. But that being said, you have to ask yourself, are you comfortable with having multiple things to check? And so for me, for example, I know I'm going to check my calendar a bunch of times a day. I know I'm going to look at my today list a bunch of times a day, and I'm probably going to look at my soon list at least once every day. Beyond that, I mean, I know I'm going to check my Facebook or something, but like beyond that, it's hard for me to trust myself that I'm going to go to those other places. If you can get yourself to do that, then by all means, have multiple lists. If you can't, then you do have to put it in one place. But that's a learning thing. Can you get yourself to have 4 or 5 or 6? And you might be. I mean, there's lots of people that are, everything comes from their ticketing tracking system, and they spend so much time there that they don't need it to be in their inbox too. Like on my team, most of my team does use the ticketing tracking system as their dominant place. Me personally, I'm doing less of that. So I rely more on my primary task list.
So when do you scrape the emails to create tasks, like as they come, or do you dedicate like certain time per day? Like will you say, okay, in the mornings I won't check, but in the afternoon I'll dedicate like 45 minutes to create tasks out of them or something? Or?
Well, so creating tasks, I mean, it's not as hard an effort as it sounds, in the sense that I'm literally, task and archive. That's it, and then I give it a different title if I need to. That's when you say creating tasks. Now, of course, how I process my email, I try not to do it in the morning, and then I usually before lunch around 11:30 or so, I'll spend some time on my task list, or rather on my inbox, processing some things I immediately reply to, some things I put on the task list, other things I just archive or delete, etc. Straight out of your inbox zero technique, if you will. But what's important, though, is I'm just saying that transition from email notification into task is a very quick effort. We're talking a couple seconds.
Distracting the.
Well, yeah, but here's the thing, though. I'm not gonna, once it's in the task list, like I feel like I have control over it. That's the thing with email is you really you don't have any control of it. You can't rename it, you can't reorder it, right? So once it's in my task list, it might start staring me down, but at least I can move it. At least I can rename it. At least I can prioritize it in some way that I have control over. And really, I think all of productivity is about how can you, or in a collaborative environment, all of it is how can I be responsive without constantly being reactive. So getting back to people in 3 hours, that's fine, that's responsive. Getting back to people in 5 minutes, that's unsustainable. That's creating an expectation that they're more important than you. I mean, our product helps with making sure that people you do need to get back to right away, you can. But generally speaking, most things don't demand your time right now. So anything you can do to set that expectation, I think is a good thing, and I think moving it to your task list is a much better place than leaving it in your inbox.
Pretty awesome. I just stumbled by, and thanks for coming to speak. This is a point I guess like Carol was talking about. How do you manage like the big projects versus like the day-to-day tasks? I believe there's like some function in between which like daily translates the big projects and the concrete steps and turns them into your daily tasks. But like, what's the right system, or I guess what have you found that really works for you? Because personally, I figured I understand the email and translating it to like daily tasks, but it's that project part that's even harder.
Yeah, I mean, this is where there's two different approaches. There's David Allen would say, put the absolute next step on your task list. This way, there's no barrier. So for example, if you have to call somebody, right, and you say, it's just call Steve, right? Well, now you have to look up Steve's number, and you have to look up whatever the ticket number it relates to is, and all this other stuff, and then you're not going to do it, right? So there is something to be said for making sure that if you put in your task list, it relates to a big project, get it there so that there's no barriers for you starting with it, right? If it's something that you need to spend an hour on as opposed to something really discrete, really specific, that's where, again, the calendar can come in and help a little bit. Or if you trust yourself enough, you could say, I need to give yourself, in other words, like to the extent that you have something bigger to accomplish, describe it that way for yourself in the task list. If you need to check in a particular fix and that's going to take 45 minutes, just put that in your task list. If you really need to block out the time, then put it in your calendar. Unfortunately, all I can do is help people to remove barriers, which means gathering all the information you possibly can so that when you see it in your task list, you don't just disappear, go away from it. And I would definitely don't want you to have to create like 600 tasks that you're always going to do them in a row. Like in other words, if two things have to happen in a row, you shouldn't, and you like always have to happen in a row, you shouldn't make them 2 tasks per se, unless you're just saving yourself time by doing it that way. But the real thing is just figuring out for yourself what removes barriers and what provides clarity for you. That's, again, all this stuff getting off the hamster wheel is so that you have enough time to have clarity, whether it be in reprioritizing or deciding what's going to make the most impact for you.
As you're going specifically from email to a task list, if you're getting emails which are long and complex and 4 paragraphs and have links off to other things and it's not entirely clear what the point is, as you're going from the email to the task list, do you take the time to read the email, think about what the tasks are, and then put those on the task list? Or do you kind of have something where it's like you're dumping like deal with this email on the task list?
In a perfect world, I'll take out the bits that are actionable. In reality, sometimes I'm just trying to get the stuff off of my plate. So it really depends on how much time you have. If you can break it into discrete things, it's better. But what's great, though, is that you preserve the URL. I want the tasks team here to fix the ability to move tasks on a mobile device between task lists without losing the URL linking to emails. Right now it breaks if you move from one task list to another. It breaks the URL if you do it on a mobile device or anything with the API. I would love that fix to be in place. But again, as long as you have the URL, that at least is your get out of jail free card. You just want to know enough in the email that you don't have to deal with this right now. And as long as you've eliminated that, it's OK to process it later.
I'm sure a lot of us spend quite a bit of time in meetings as well, and I'm wondering if you have any general thoughts on how to make meetings most efficient as well.
Well, there's a lot to that. I mean, I think it's like everything in life. The more you prepare, the better it is when you show up. And a lot of people use meetings to just sort of like be a hand-holding to start accomplishing things, when the reality is you should be going there to report or to discuss the things that really do need deliberation. I guess one tip I'll just throw out is just when brainstorming, sometimes the best way to do it is to not do it out loud, but to write. Because as soon as you start doing it out loud, the conversation and the thoughts go in that direction. Whereas if you spend 5 minutes and you just list out the things that you want to then bring up, or you have people do this before the meeting, but sometimes it's easier to do it in the meeting. If you have them all write it out while silent and then put it on the whiteboard or with the sticky notes or whatever, you're going to find that you're going to have a lot more variety of ideas, and that the people who tend to be quieter, and I'm sure there's people here in Google that are very outspoken and people that are quiet and sometimes the most brilliant folks, that will not overshadow them. So that's just one technique for meetings. I hope it helps. But yeah, there's so many different things that one can do with meetings. But stick to the agenda, respect people's time, show up on time, and just try to not make it so the people that overpower meetings. So thank you guys so much for your time. I'll be sticking around here, and this is how to get in touch. I appreciate it. Thanks.